holding on to hurt from the past, it only hurts you. It's like carrying around a weight that you were never supposed to hold or have. They say time heals all wounds, but that time, it won't start until you take the first step. You've got to let go.
Please cover me, buried in hope.
Ben, what's holding you back? I can tell you're holding back. You've got to let it go. Release the pain.
It was June the 10th, 1987, and I was head over heels in love with Linda Green. I decided to pop the question, and I wanted the time and the place to be just as amazing as Linda was. I had heard that the Northern Cruise Line had just built a new cruise ship. Supposed to be one of the fanciest, if not the fanciest ship on the water. And I thought that would be perfect. So I worked all the extra shifts that I could. And when I had saved the money, I surprised her with 2 tickets. We left out on July 3rd for a 7-day cruise. The Northern Star was everything we had dreamed about and more. As we boarded the ship, you could tell it was new by the smell. Smell of fresh paint on the walls and smell of polish on the floors. It had this grand entranceway that you walked through, made you feel like royalty. Chief Steward met us and escorted us to our room, and I had the first surprise waiting there. He opened the door, let us in, and she walked in and saw it and gave me a big hug. I had a bottle of her favorite sweet red wine chilling in a bucket. Linda loves sweet red wine. So we were getting ready for dinner. I'm trying to work up the courage to ask her to marry me. I had that feeling you get in the pit of your stomach. Scared that she might say no. A little nervous that she might say yes. She was wearing this long blue dress. She looked beautiful. I remember just staring at her, amazed by her beauty. We decided to go up to the top deck before dinner. And we were up there, and I had finally worked up the courage to pop the question. Put my hand in the pocket for the ring, and after a brief moment of panic, I remembered that I had left the ring in the cabin. I had hidden it because she had wanted to pick out my suit for the night. And she was just laughing her laugh and smiling as I fumbled in my pocket. Oh, she had the greatest smile. And so I told her I'd left the seasick medicine in the room. So I leaned over. I kissed her cheek. And I told her I'd be right back. And I headed for the room.
You never saw her again, did you?
I don't know. I heard that it was two old, undetonated World War II mines that collided with the Northern Star. Both hit the bow. I was almost to the room. I was in the hallway, and the force of the explosion knocked me down. I lay there for a second to get my bearings, and once then I remembered what was important. And I jumped up and I tried to make my way back to the deck. There were people running around, and crew was yelling directions. I fought my way through the crowd, and I made my way back up to the deck. I grabbed 2 life vests and began to run forward where we had been standing, but the whole bow of the ship was already underwater. And I began running through the crowd, looking for her. People were running and screaming and yelling and fighting, and people were just in shock and panic.
Where were the lifeboats?
There wasn't enough time. I've thought about it over and over, and my best guess is From the time the ship was hit to the time the ship was sinking was maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. I must have blacked out at some point because I was awakened by going underwater. Someone was pulling me underwater, trying to pull themselves out, and fought them off and looked around, and the ship was gone. The sun was setting and temperature was dropping fast, and I remember seeing families huddled together, praying aloud. Some were screaming for help. Some were just crying, but the crying fell on deaf ears. I began to swim around, looking for, lifting the heads of the drowned victims, calling out her name, asking if anyone had seen her, but it's like she was never even there. Oh, I was so tired. I was still swimming when the sun started to come up. And I can remember stopping for a moment, watching the day break, taking in that moment of beauty amidst all the chaos. Day 2. I don't know if it was the worst day, but it was the day where the idea that we might not be rescued in time really began to dawn on people. There was one point where I was ready to give up, and I saw the body of a woman dressed in blue, floating about 15, 20 yards away. And so I swam out to her. And I reached out to turn her so that I could see her face. And I realized she'd been bitten in half. You see, she was just floating on top of the water like a top. It wasn't Linda. But I suddenly became frozen with fear because I realized that we were not alone in the water. And so I began to swim back to my group as fast as I could. I got back out of breath, and they were asking me, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I was so scared that I couldn't answer them. But pretty soon the screams in the distance answered their question. To this day, I still hear the kids screaming for their mom and dad for help. Some people began pushing others out into the water so that the sharks would get them. They were fighting over life jackets, over any piece of floating debris they could scramble up on. Anything to avoid the agony of being eaten alive. We were all tired and hungry. And by this point, some had started to give in and drink the seawater. I saw some quietly slip out of their life jacket and slide into the water, never to be seen again. Some started to become delusional. There was one man in our group that began to yell, "There's a boat! There's a boat! We're saved!" And we tried to stop him, but he swam off toward his boat. He got just far enough for us all to witness the sharks tear him to pieces. The morning of the third day, we heard an airplane in the distance. And as the plane began to get closer and started to fly in lower, we began to think that maybe we would be rescued. But it was still another hour or more before we saw the rescue boats. Boats, but they only needed one. All of the survivors were put on one boat. And I began to move through the crowd looking for Linda. I found a crewman with a clipboard, and I asked him if Linda Green was one of the survivors. He said no.
Oh Lord, I see what brings.
He said no.
It's a mother to all.
And so, on July the 3rd, 1987, 2,550 people, and their lives changed forever. Some died in the explosion. Some drowned with the ship. Some died with the sharks.
And birds will sing from tops of trees.
Some of us
Falling angels.
the lucky ones, they say.
Oh, mothers, I see you.
We survived.